Stop trying to play know-it-all in your parenting journey.
Welcome to Parenting Unmasked, the show where we ditch perfection, embrace the chaos, and raise our neurodivergent families with communication, creativity, and compassion. I'm Kimberly Cox from the Neurocircus, and I'll be your host. And this is your permission slip to parent your way.
In today's episode, we're going to be talking about how there is no one-size-fits-all solution to parenting. Okay, so first of all, I want to start out by saying that society has created this myth that parents must have all the answers at all times. And a lot of times as parents, we will feel like we aren't good enough, or we aren't experienced enough, or we just feel like a failure in general because we don't have the answer to something. And the truth is, that is parenting. Most of the time, parenting is problem solving, working through things, trying to figure out the answers. Sometimes we get lucky and we can find a similar situation and take some advice from someone else, but it is not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. I can remember there have been plenty of times when I have been at a loss, or I have tried to implement what someone else told me to do, only for it to be a crashing down, ridiculous mess. And then myself feeling like a failure, my kids not really knowing what to do next because, we were all in this together trying to figure out what we were doing. I can remember a few times, and one particular time I'll talk about, where just me trying to force my child to react or to have a certain emotion because I felt like that was the appropriate emotion for that point. However, my child did not even know how to name emotions at that point. And so the emotions that my child was feeling, she was unable to communicate. And I was over here thinking, you're having the wrong reaction, the wrong emotion. When the truth is, what she needed to do instead of having a different emotion was to communicate the emotion she was feeling and maybe some of why she was feeling that way. And so once I figured that out, we started to work on that, and that opened up a whole new world for her to be able to communicate instead of falling apart and melting down and behaving, quote, badly. I'm going to tell you right now, it is a lie that if you don't have it figured out, you are failing. That is a lie. We're going to take a quick break and we will be right back.
Hey, it's May, and the Neurocircus is in full bloom right now. So let me give you the rundown of every magical happening this month. First up, the Abundantly Aligned Action Challenge kicks off Monday, May 5th. 3 weeks, 15 weekdays of setting powerful intentions without burnout and watching the manifestations roll in. It's free, and honestly, you don't want to miss out. Then, on May 17th, we're officially re-releasing the Neurocircus Rings books. One book combining all 3 rings with stories and tips. Also, those who purchase in the month of May get 6 weeks of free co-group coaching. Details to come. If you've got kids at home this summer, get ready for instant summer camp. We're talking weekly themes, fun activities, and my favorite new addition to the Neurocircus, Moonlight Magic Minis, launching May 9th. Gentle, family-friendly moon rituals for bonding, intention setting, and sensory under the stars. And to wrap up the month, we've got Camp Planning Week, the 27th through the 30th. So you can get totally set up for a summer that's joyful, easy, and aligned with your family's energy. It's all happening this month. I'm so glad you're here to ride this wave with us. Now, back to the podcast.
All right, welcome back. So I had just got done talking to you guys about how my daughter changed some of her behaviors, as we like to call them, by being able to communicate emotions. So this is the time when we start talking about the fact that for our kids, especially our kids, a lot of times behaviors that we notice, the attitudes, the dismissing us, the going into their own world, the ignoring us. A lot of that stems from being unable to communicate their needs at the moment. So there are unmet needs that need to be met in order for the child to be back into a place where they can communicate, where they can behave the way we want them to. When babies are little, they cry when they're hungry, they cry when they're tired, they cry when they're bored, they cry when they're scared, when they're, don't have their mommy or daddy. They cry because that's the only way that they communicate. Big kids might have the words to communicate, but might not feel safe using those words to communicate. If they are told constantly over time that they're overreacting, they're too much, this isn't really that important, I don't understand why you're getting so worked up about this, you need to let it go. I'm guilty of doing some of that myself. When we tell them these things, they start to feel like they're not able to share, like what they have to share doesn't matter, or like if they share and they get too emotionally involved in it, that we're going to just shut them down anyway. So that is a place where we as parents need to take a breath, and we need to ask ourselves, what are we communicating to our kids when they are triggering us? They get triggered, they react, then we a lot of times react to that trigger, and in our reacting to that trigger, we then trigger them again, which then makes them go deeper, and this cycle just keeps going and going. So it is important for us to use curiosity to figure out what needs are unmet, or why we are having the behaviors, having the situations, having the problems. What is it that our kids need that we are unable to give them because we don't know? A lot of times we would be able to give them what they need if we knew. But because we can't read minds and they're having trouble communicating it, and even when they do communicate it, a lot of times it comes out angry or frustrated because they're already worked up. So they don't necessarily mean to come off that way. But if they're already in that spiral, it's just going to continue. And as it continues, we take it that way. And then before you know it, we have this spiral going on. So I'm going to leave this section with this thought. What if your child's struggle is really the invitation for both of you to grow? We're going to take a quick break, and then we will be right back to wrap this episode up.
Every September, my daughters and I take part in something incredibly close to our hearts, the Out of the Darkness Walk from the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. This year, we'll be together on Saturday, September 6th at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time in beautiful downtown Indianapolis to walk. And I'm inviting each and every one of you to walk with us on the NeuroCircus's official team. Suicide loss is something my family has experienced personally. Walk is a moment of healing, connection, and hope for so many. Our goal this year, 30 plus walkers with us to show up and raise awareness and remind everyone that you're never alone. If you would like to join our team and walk either physically or virtually, the link is in the description, or you can DM me anytime. This movement is about light, community, and walking forward together. We'd love to have you there. Now, back to the podcast.
All right, welcome back. We just got done talking about being curious. One of the ways that we can be curious is by asking our kids questions. Now, there isn't necessarily a great time to do this because there's kind of a both. If you ask it when they're not in the middle of something, they may not be able to answer it for that particular time. And if you ask them during a time when they're kind of in meltdown, they might be melting down too much to actually be able to communicate to. But these are some questions that we can ask them, and maybe we ask them during, and if they start to have an issue with it, if they start to, it makes them go deeper into their behavior, then maybe we just pull back and we ask them again once they're calm, more calm from it. But one is, what would help you feel safe right now? Because a lot of times what happens is our kids feel overwhelmed, frustrated, upset with themselves, sometimes upset with not being able to do something. And sometimes our kids, we ask them to do something, and in their head, something that takes 10 minutes might feel like it's never going to be done, and they're never going to get to go back to what they were doing. And we are being totally unfair because They may not understand how long something takes. They may not understand how, if they just do the thing, right? I don't know how many times my mom did this with me when I was little, and I find myself at least feeling, if not actually communicating these thoughts, which are, if you would just do the thing that takes 5 minutes, you would be back to doing what you wanted to do in 5 minutes. But instead, you're arguing with me and fighting with me, and here we go. 30 minutes later, and we still have the 5 minutes to do the thing. So, but again, a lot of times that's because they don't fully understand that. So how can we put accommodations in place? Can we get them a timer and show them 10 minutes and say, can you take 10 minutes real fast to go do this thing? And then you can go back to doing what you were doing. A very easy way to just change some wording, right? Change the language you're using in order to help your kid not feel like everything's being taken from them. Another question is, what is your body telling you? We use this a lot with anxiety and with all of your like sensory stuff and your overwhelm and things like that, because we can learn a lot by listening to our body. And our kids might not understand it right away, and that's fine. We can take the time to just teach them what that means, right? Like if I'm feeling tight in my chest and I feel like I'm having trouble getting a deep breath because I feel anxious, then we can stop what we're doing and we can do some breathing exercises. We can do some deep breathing and we can calm ourselves down to a level where we can do the things that we need to do appropriately. And then what do I need to understand better about you? Giving them the ability to us. They might feel very much like they have been misunderstood, but they might feel like every time we are in an argument and they're trying to argue their point, we come back at them. And a lot of times we do, because we're in that kind of motion, like that back and forth. So if we ask them this question and then give them the opportunity to just let things happen, to see where this goes, right? And then we listen with open ears, listen with an open heart. We realize that they are not us. And so they are individuals with their own individual thoughts and individual feelings and individual needs. And there are things that we just can't always predict. So as much as the world would have us believe that we have to be spot on and always a step ahead and have every need met before it needs to be met, that's not always the case. We can't always do that. Plus, part of our job as a parent is to teach our children how to communicate their needs so that they can advocate for themselves in situations where you aren't always there. So I encourage you guys to take these ideas, to take this podcast, to journal about one thing this week that you've learned about your kid, okay? So as we draw this to a close, I want you to remember that your kids are your mirror, your compass, and your teacher, not because they are perfect, but because they are real. Being real is what helps us to see the human, the imperfect, the fact that as much as we would, love to have this, we did everything right and we feel like we're good all the way through. Doing everything right sometimes looks like knowing when you need to take a step back, knowing when you need to regroup, figure something else out, ask questions, get curious, and then let them help you come up with the solution. So today is Wednesday. Monday, we started the Abundantly Aligned Action Challenge. If being in this space, if learning from your kids, if having an open line of communication and being able to work through behaviors and through some of the problems that you guys are seeing is something that is important to you, I encourage you to click the link below, get into the Abundantly Aligned Action Challenge, and let's make that one of your goals. And I can help you and facilitate how we can set up an entire plan to do the communication better. All right, I'm Kimberly Cox. This is the Parenting Unmasked podcast. I hope you guys have a wonderful week, and I'll talk to you guys later.